It's the end of the day with Ray. Hello, my friends. You see in the Sharp Interactive board, I have Tricia Judge, and Tricia Judge is the Executive Director of the International Imaging Technology Council. And there's been some great news in the remanufacturing world. There's been great news in stopping these single-use clone cartridges coming in from Asia. And Trish is going to share that good news with you, but I'll give you a hint. It has to do with about 59 people. Tricia, how are you doing? Tell me about this fantastic thing that's being going on right now with a congressman in the United States.
No, I'm just so excited to share what's going on. The General Services Administration, the world's largest consumer, actually, is considering putting certain restrictions on purchases of single-use plastics.
Okay.
And 59 congressmen have sent a couple of letters to the GSA encouraging them to do this. In particular, Congressman Joe Morelli from New York has submitted a letter, and in his letter, he uses toner cartridges as an example of why single-use plastics should not be purchased by the U.S. government.
This is some really big news, and when I first heard this, I started thinking some other implications around this. And we've all have been trying to fight the overreaching OEM. Let's just call them HP. They push out the firmwares. They prevent people from using remanufactured cartridges. So we've talked about this numerous times, and the industry's been screaming about this for a long time. But I have a question for you. So if I'm a customer and I buy a HP printer, and I buy that printer because I believe that I can use a remanufactured cartridge in it, and HP pushes out a firmware and prevents me from using a remanufactured cartridge in it, wouldn't that kind of fall underneath the single-use plastic ban if there ever was one?
I certainly think that you can say that that's a violation because, if you are restricting the customer's use of a remanufactured product, you are condemning that cartridge to be either returned to HP for disposal or recycling, and you are discouraging remanufacturing. I think that certainly runs against the spirit of the ban, if not the actual letter of the law of the ban.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, because HP, they're running around with their Amplify agreement, and they're trying to control that consumable that goes into the printer. Let's be honest, that's what it's all about. Dealers giving HP data so they can control what kind of toner goes in the machine. But if you limit me from putting in a remanufactured cartridge, even though that cartridge that's in there is not a single-use plastic, but if you don't allow me to remanufacture it, in essence, it becomes a single-use plastic. So I'm going to watch this close, because if that happens and they really get this ban going, we need to start looking for some applications where that might be going on. And I think those customers would have a great argument. And Trish, the reason I bring it up, and I did a video on this yesterday when I talked about the Amplify agreement and the crazy nonsense around that, but HP is notorious for going throughout the whole world and talking about all these great, wonderful things they do. In my opinion, most of what they do is permission to show up. They're a global company, so quit bragging about stuff that everybody should be doing. You better have ethics in your hiring and all your, it's the year 2023 almost, right? But this whole thing around the environment, and they're stewardess to the environment, and they care about the environment, and they just don't prove it with their actions when they push out firmware and they do all these other things. So I'm hoping that these 59 congressmen, we get the momentum on the single-use plastic, and we can push that to look at this a different way. I just...
Well, there's already the EPEAT program, which is the Electronics Product Environmental Assessment Tool. And as part of the EPEAT program, in order for your electronic product to get EPEAT certification, you cannot, particularly printers, you cannot impede the use of a remanufactured product. And so far, there have been several customers who have brought up the fact that HP isn't walking the walk. They've got their little EPEAT sticker, but they are not allowing the use of a remanufactured cartridge. So one of those customers, the Department of Energy, actually brought a complaint, a formal complaint against against HP through with the Global Electronics Council, who administers EP.
Sure.
We brought a complaint. The United Kingdom Association brought a complaint, but when it comes from a true customer like the Department of Energy, that's a big deal. And still, the Global Electronics Council found in favor of HP because they have a tiny disclaimer in their paperwork that says that they don't interfere with the use of remanufactured products. Well, actions are quite to the contrary. So we're probably going to try to firm up that language. No, we're not going to try. We're going to definitely attempt to firm up the language so that if you're going to be claiming that you put on an EP printer, it better be able to employ a remanufactured product.
Well, Trish, the other thing they do, which is so absurd, and I talked about this in yesterday's episode, but they put a dollar amount to what they sell in the marketplace because the customer bought from them because of all these wonderful things they do and the stewards they are of the world. And I'm just like, so if a customer bought from HP and they were under the impression that they could remanufacture their cartridges because they were doing it maybe on their old fleet, and then all of a sudden they couldn't do it with the new one because HP pushed out a firmware, I think they would be in violation of why they bought. I think they could go back to HP and say, look, I bought these, and you're bragging about it to the whole world, saying that we're one of those customers that represents part of this money that you got because we were such great people for the environment, and now we can't use a remanufactured cartridge. So I just think people need to be challenging these people, and I appreciate everything you do and your loud voice in the marketplace to do that, because it's just crazy.
Well, clearly it's misrepresentation. You could certainly go as far as to say it's a violation of the contract, the sales contract that the customer has with HP. I mean, the whole point of buying a printer is to make it print. And if you are doing anything for any reason that keeps that from happening, you're working against the best interests of your customer. It boggles the mind why they would think this is a good idea.
Well, here's my last thing. I'll just throw this out for people to think about. But, HP, their stock has fallen off a cliff. They've lost, I think they were down 32% today from just where they were 120 days ago. They're way below the average price that they've spent over the last, 6-7 years. They bought billions of dollars worth of their own stock back. They're underneath that. The pressure from the shareholders, the pressure from the board. I can't imagine what HP is going to do when they're actually under some pressure, some real pressure from investors. I mean, do you think that's going to ramp up some of the tactics?
That's a really good question, and I don't have a crystal ball, but if they are paying lip service to their environmental commitment, and it's greenwashing, and it's greenwashing loud and clear. So I would imagine that there've got to be some board members and investors who call them on it. It's just, I encourage your viewers to go to my website or my LinkedIn page, because I have several new videos that I've been putting out about greenwashing, particularly in light of the products that are being sold on the internet that are being imported from overseas that are corrupting our core stream and doing damage to the remanufacturing community. Greenwashing is a very serious issue right now because climate change is real and climate crises are real, and we need to get serious about this. And companies like HP that say they're walking the walk and aren't should be called on it.
And they brag about it quite a bit. Well, Trish, like I said, I appreciate everything you do. Let's get some of those videos. I'll reshare those on my platform as well. I know you did one explaining the clone cartridge versus the OEM, so that was real good stuff. So anything you want to add before we end?
No, just give a shout out to Congressman Joe Morelli for being an industry champion. I mean, he's up there on Capitol Hill recruiting other congressmen and senators to acknowledge that remanufactured products are the way to go. So he really is our champion, and it's such a pleasure to work with him.
That's fantastic, and hopefully you get a bunch more senators and congressmen on board. because everybody knows this, and hopefully HP will learn it. Status quo is the killer of all that'll be invented. Don't get stuck in status quo, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.